Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you are joining in with us, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And tonight we are gathered for our Freedom Summer School 2026, co-hosted by the Council of Bishops and the African Methodist Episcopal Church's Social Action Commission, Bishop Francine A. Brookins, Chair, and Dr. Jacqueline DuPont Walker, our Director and Consultant. And certainly we'd like to welcome Dr. DuPont Walker this evening to open us with a word of prayer and turn our service over to Dr. Mark Tyler. Dr. Jackie?
Thank you, and greetings to our global audience representing African Methodism in 41 countries on 5 continents. Today, wherever you are, I'm sure you're dealing with a number of realities, but the one thing that we bring to those realities is the fact that God is in charge. And so we start our discussion this morning, afternoon, evening, and night by going to God in prayer. Wherever you are, please join us. God, we thank you for this day, this 19th day of July in the year 2026. God, there are lessons we should have learned from your walk on this earth. There are lessons we can model from those amongst us. There are directions that we will take because we understand and believe in the power of prayer. So in this moment, as we look at situations that seem far beyond control and certainly beyond our control, we come to the altar to leave those burdens and to leave informed and ready, God, because we have heard your will and we're ready to step out of the boat. And God, we claim our mustard seed faith that we know we can say to the mountain, move, and it will move. So God, today, this afternoon, your children, the village you called us to in African Methodism, stands ready. And so, God, we open our eyes and our ears, our hearts, that from this coming together, the world will not be the same because they will see a message lived out in your name. This we ask. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. I've been given the wonderful task by our chair, Bishop Francine A. Brookins, to present the Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler, Ph.D. I say present because his walk and his witness is one that when you say Mark Kelly Tyler, most AMEs know who he is. In case we have some people joining us in our village today, and I certainly hope so, who are being introduced to him for the first time, let me tell you a little bit. We talk in Episcopal districts and annual conferences and across anything else, but he is a son of Richard and Sarah Allen. He is a native of Oakland, California, which is in the 5th Episcopal District. He is said to have thought for a moment about what was right, but then answered his call to a liberating gospel of Jesus Christ in 1987. And since then, he has been through all of the preparation. He's a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, HBCU. Richard Allen said, have schools and send our children to them. He is a graduate of Payne Theological Seminary. I know, having been sent there, urged, and hopefully supported by Bishop Mrs. Venton R. Anderson, and then founded the University of Dayton, where he received his Ph.D. He's been in full-time ministry since 1994, serving in the 5th and the 3rd and the 1st Episcopal districts, landing as the pastor of Mother Bethel, the 52nd pastor of Mother Bethel in Philadelphia, the congregation that we give credit to Richard Allen and his wife Flora as founding and setting up. And then through an outstanding ministry to be elected in the 52nd section, that number 52 of the General Conference, as our historiographer and the the executive director of research and scholarship. I'll direct you to any Google document to get the rest of his well lived life and answer to his calling. But just a few anecdotal stories to how he lives out that. The Social Action Commission wanted to have the church adopt the climate change agenda, and there was no other historic Black denomination that had done that. And it was Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler who worked with us to put a documentary together. And we found in the process that we were well ahead of ourselves. Not only did we understand the need, and it was documented through the voices of our leadership, but we already had in Zimbabwe Christian educators who were adopting for the Sunday school literature the issue of climate change because it faced them. And so Reverend Precious was added. He knows how to bring alive the issue so that we're able to not only understand it for ourselves, but be able to share it with others so they will understand the ministry of liberation gospel that we have. He has actually served as faculty and continues to serve as faculty in a number of different educational institutions. The documentaries about the life of Richard Allen and the partnership with Absalom Jones, which speaks to how the AME Church always brings everybody into the fore, is extremely important. And he has lived it out in the larger community, being very, very active in the social action and social justice arenas in Philadelphia and across this nation, and a wonderful supportive ally in the Commission on Social Action of the AME Church. He has not been shy about delving into the politics of the secular world and bringing to it the kind of integrity that's needed. We are fortunate and blessed that this Alpha Phi Alpha member with his wife Leslie and their children, who are wonderfully well and now functioning as adults, still finds himself excited. And as he has traveled across the country on two wheels to tell our story, to remind us of the brush harbors where we started with, and the brush harbors we may have to go back to now, who is reminding us of our legacy, that we may stand pridefully, but also humbly, to bring others into the social justice work that the historic Black church is called to. Today, we have as our teacher, our discussion leader, our preacher, our moderator, and as a purveyor of truth that will inspire us to continue to live out what he shares with us. I give to you the Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler, our friend and our leader.
Thank you so much, Sister Jackie. I'm telling you, listen, folks, you don't know, she is a tireless, absolutely. We throw those words around a lot, but Sister Jackie is literally a tireless social justice warrior. And I draw inspiration from you and from your work that I've been able to be blessed first to witness, and now to work alongside you in supporting as we support one another. It really is a wonderful, wonderful relationship. Thank you for that great introduction. And I hope Leslie was somewhere listening to it this afternoon or this evening. Certainly to your chairperson, who's also my chairperson. She has those dual hats. Chair of Social Action is also the chair of publications. To Bishop Francine Brookins, who I know is traveling to get to the WIM conference, but I just want to thank her as well for stepping into this role. It's something that really, I believe God has called her for as well. So I'm just excited about how all of this is falling together. Certainly to everybody here, to the Freedom Summer team, and to those who helped to pull this curriculum together, please go to the website where you can find the curriculum. Use this in your church schools. It just got dropped into the chat. Thank you, Reverend French, for that. But certainly to Reverend Stephen Green and Reverend Cassandra Gould, and there may have been others, but I know that on that call, they took on the responsibility and came back with something that was great. And so I'm just happy to do week number 2, Freedom's Prophet and the Road to Jubilee. The verse that is framing this is Leviticus 25, chapter 25, verse 10, NRSV updated edition. And you shall hallow the 50th year, and you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, you shall return every one of you to your property and every one of you to your family. And so on tonight, I thought what I would do, I've got some thoughts here, but I pulled together what I want to call kind of a highlight reel of the documentaries and other projects that I've done, some of them, not the entire catalog, but I rolled it into one continuous kind of clip. And I want to focus on the social action, social justice portions of those projects. Each one spoke to it in some kind of way, because you can't talk about AME history without delving into social action and social justice. It's just who we are. And so it will begin with the Richard Allen documentary. It'll roll into echoes from the General Conference, move into Spirit of African Methodism. Then it'll end with a very, very short clip of one of my own new projects on my site, Black History on Two Wheels, that Sister Jackie talked about, where I go into an old AME church up in the mountains of Pennsylvania that was an actual Underground Railroad site, very well documented, Mount Gilead AME Church in Bucks County. You can find it there. Fascinating story. And then afterwards, I hope that we'll have enough time to open up in Zoom and use the Q&A feature so that we can hear some of your voices and hear your thoughts about how this speaks to you in this particular moment. Let me just say at the outset that the AME Church has been here from the very beginning. And, you know, we often talk about it as an AME story. As an American story, but you can't even spell America without AME. But even from the very beginning, the church was almost destined to be a global church. I mean, if you kind of just consider the fact that during the blacksmith shop era of Mother Bethel, that in the 1790s, Richard Allen helped to bring in 30 plus Jamaicans who had been freed from enslavement in Jamaica by their owner there. He didn't know what to do with them. He inherited them and did not believe, as his father did, in holding enslaved people. So he set them free and worked out an arrangement with the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. They didn't know what to do with them. They got the money and they called Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, and they then helped them. And so from the very beginning, we are already in touch with people outside of the United States. His own son would go to Haiti as a missionary in the 1820s. And then when John returned, John and Richard Jr. went, but John came back and then moved to Canada. And we know that people like Daniel Coker took the voyage and went to Liberia after in the 1820s as well. So from the very beginning, we have been a global church. I mean, this is not new. It may not have been as formalized as it became much later in the later 1800s, but from the onset, Richard Allen had a global view, and that in some ways, you can almost say the AME Church is one of the first institutions that began to knit the diaspora back together. I mean, tomorrow, while I'm here in Charlotte, we'll be working on a documentary film with WIM, but there will be, you know, women preachers who are flying in from all around the world coming into this meeting because of what started in Philadelphia in the 1700s. So with that preamble said, let me just go ahead and get right into this, because I want you to view this, and I'll try to find a way to make this shareable as well. But all these projects are available on the AME Church's YouTube site, thanks to Dr. John Thomas, and thank you to Dr. Roderick Beelan as well for making this platform available. Please use these video projects in your own teaching, in your own congregations, but we've got to continue to tell our story. Now, that being said, let me go to the video.
I came to Philadelphia. Preaching was given out to me at 5 o'clock in the morning at St. George's Church.
The Methodist movement in America was growing.
The largest population of blacks in America at that time is here in Philadelphia. The numbers of blacks coming into St. George's Church were increasing by leaps and bounds.
As Methodism became far more institutional, it seemed that it became less and less racially egalitarian. So it is at this moment that Richard Allen begins to ponder the creation of an African church.
Absalom Jones and I discussed feeling cramped, so we saw the necessity of erecting a place of worship for the colored people. We raised a society of 42 members.
A free African society. Most people probably thought he was out of his mind. I mean, you know, free. I mean, where would you go?
The Methodist establishment was threatened by Allen's actions.
The elders soon forbid us holding any such meetings. He used very degrading and insulting language to us.
So, tensions are building when Richard Allen and Absalom Jones show up to church on a Sunday like they ordinarily would, but the rules have changed all of a sudden.
Jones and Allen arrived that Sunday morning and were directed to the balcony. They felt that they were co-owners of this church. They were not going to sit in an all-black section.
We had not been long upon our knees before I saw one of the ushers having hold of Reverend Absalom Jones, pulling him up off his knees.
The usher persisted and began to forcibly move Absalom Jones.
Mr. Jones said, "Wait until prayer is over, and I will get up and trouble you no more." By this time, prayer was over, and we all went out of the church in a body, and they were no more plagued with us in the church.
So something very hostile, something very mean-spirited, something very awful happened that day.
The walkout was the beginning of the civil rights movement in the United States of America.
The black church gave Richard Allen a sense of freedom and autonomy impossible to imagine.
We had no place of worship, and we did not mean to go to St. George's Church anymore. Here was the beginning and rise of the first African church in America.
The striking quality about Allen is that he has an indomitable will and really thinks that he can do anything in life.
But the white Methodists force Allen's hand. They claim Bethel Church as their own. They aim to take over the church and install a white elder.
Allen won't budge. He leads a resistance, and the congregation backs him willingly.
A new clergyman was appointed to take the charge in Philadelphia. He soon waked us up by demanding the keys and the books. Unless we submitted to him, he would read us all out of meeting. We told him the house was ours, we had bought it, and paid for it. This brought on a lawsuit, which ended in our favor, delivered by the providence of God and determined by the Supreme Court.
The very first sit-in in America was not in the 1950s at a lunch counter, but the first sit-in was actually at Mother Bethel Church.
This led directly to the formation of the AME Church, and it became an unprecedented assertion of black self-determination. From Bethel, the church would grow and grow rapidly. the AME Church came to be, as W.E.B. Du Bois described, the greatest Negro organization in the world. Despite many successes, especially in creating an independent black church, Richard Allen confronted many frustrations and disappointments, and he was mad and angry with American society, and he was afraid that many of his hopes, dreams, and aspirations would not be realized.
It's not surprising, after all that Allen had gone through in his later years, that he would begin to have doubts about whether or not America could be a place and a home for blacks.
Richard Allen and his colleagues began to explore options for a free black colony, either in Haiti or in Africa or perhaps even in Canada. They were serious, but at the same time, a group of whites formed the American Colonization Society. From the outset, the American Colonization Society was a front to send all free blacks out of American society. They never intended to send slaves to Africa. Richard Allen still believed that the idea of some African Americans immigrating outside of the United States was worthy of discussion.
There was a meeting held at Mother Bethel in 1817 where the leadership in the black community called together a mass meeting of black Philadelphians to discuss colonization.
When all of the discussion had ended and the meeting was coming to its conclusion, it was clear that the movement was not going to find favor.
Richard Allen was an intelligent man. He was a fearless man. Everything that he did was helping us prepare for the future.
By the end of his life, through the ups and through the downs, Allen became really committed to staying in America and making things work. And it's amazing because when he died in 1831, there really weren't many signs that were hopeful that things would ever get better for the majority of blacks in America. And yet, he died at peace, that this was home.
We present to you at this time a great leader, Martin Luther King.
I never knew until 1964 that you could actually see electricity in the air. Because when Dr. Martin Luther King came to speak and the convention center was packed to capacity,
It was almost like electricity or like a tornado.
I fortunately was asked to be on the delegation that went to pick him up. I actually drove the car myself and went to get him to bring him to the General Conference. I felt 1,000 feet tall.
That's a good demonstration of the effectiveness of the General Conference. Everybody was talking about General Conference because of Martin Luther King, for social issues.
The AME Church has always been very active in the whole arena of civil rights. The church then also had its stamp of approval for all those who were willing to join into the battle.
I still remember hearing that long playing LP of Dr. King's address to the General Conference, Sleeping Through a Revolution. Bishop Frederick Calhoun James presented him, and it was a stirring. It is still an inspiring message if you hear it even today.
To the distinguished bishops of this great church, and to all of the general officers and delegates to this General Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, ladies and gentlemen.
72 in Dallas, Texas. That was a very exciting time for me. It was hot. It was politically hot. There were deep emotions about a lot of things politically going on at the time. The church spoke to that.
The General Conference had been alerted that President
Nixon was going to attend and to address the conference. And as it turned out, at the appointed hour, we discovered that it was not the president at all, but that it was his brother who had been sent as a surrogate to speak in his place. That was not at all well received by the delegation.
It so happened they put him in a committee to go receive him and to usher him in. And just as we approached the platform, it went into pandemonium.
Absolutely incredible to see how quickly a protest could be organized. He popped in the middle of worship, like just after the Decalogue, something early on in the worship experience. And I can remember I was sitting in the gallery of sorts, and I'm watching these leaders of the church gathering at the rear of the auditorium and marching in a procession toward the stage, and then flooding the stage.
I heard all of this noise coming from the back of the auditorium and went straight to the pulpit, took the microphone. Bishop Bright and Bishop Jordan stood up with the Black Power sign and said to the general church, nothing comes before us before we have worship.
When that interruption occurred, Bishop Jordan got up, protested, and walked out. Many of us joined him. When we got outside and the press was pressing, why did we treat the president's brother that way? And I explained that Mr. Dixon's attitudes on race and his general demeanor were not very popular with us, and therefore we did not want his brother. But the main offense was that they interrupted the worship service, which we all felt was very inappropriate.
When I think of the AME Church, I'm reminded of the quote by Bishop Norris that says, the AME Church is the best gift that God has given African Americans. You can see the hand of God moving all throughout our history. You know, the AME Church is about bringing people to God. It's about building community. It's about how do we get closer to God? How do we become more spiritual? However, our church and every good AME pastor knows that we are not just concentrating on getting people to heaven. We're also concentrating on their social, their psychological, all of their needs, their physical needs. And so we are to be about our Father's business, which includes looking at the holistic ministry.
One, it's in an indomitable spirit. To think we are now in our 200th, second century, and still rolling on. To think about the things, the challenges that are still there, and yet the church still meets, still gathers, still determined to meet those challenges. A favorite expression in the AME Church, you have come to worship, now leave to serve. And I think that is our spirit.
For me, the spirit of the African Methodist Episcopal Church can be captured in 2 or 3 words. The first is liberation. The second is development. And the third is definition. That we are about the liberation of the oppressed people of the African diaspora. 2, that we are for their development. Call it self-help if you wanna, but their development and participation in the world society on equal footing with everybody else. And 3rd, that we will define ourselves. We will define our issues. We will define our own goals, because whoever makes the definition
has already forecast the outcome.
Well, I think what it means to me is that here we had an institution that got its origin back in 1787, before black men were really free, when people were striving for some sense of dignity. Those brave people who began the movement which became the AME Church had the courage and the integrity and the faith to step out and give leadership to what really became, I think, one of the greatest treasures of our time.
I was inspired as a boy, 8 years old, when I heard and understood the story of Richard Allen. And it gave me the energy and the drive to want to be something. I was just thinking of the nerve that it took for Richard Allen to walk out of that church. And even some of the people in there with him, his own color, would not follow him. But he walked out and stood for justice.
I've always called the AME Church a movement. Richard Allen, the founder of the AME Church, was not pursuing a religion when he founded the church. He had already found religion, not establishing a religion, but precipitating a movement. I just always refer to the AME Church as the AME movement.
What is most important is Richard Allen has engendered in us a conversation about self-initiation, self-development, self-affirmation, and how we help to make the community of faith, which we call African Methodism, have the space and opportunity to enlarge the circle of fellowship and growth for our witness and worship.
That's what made the AME Church so unique. And the genius of African Methodism is that from the least to the greatest, it has been I think, a kind of interesting melting pot, if you will, where people have come from different backgrounds, whether you're talking about women, children, black, white. Our motto itself speaks volumes.
Well, social justice is very important to AMEs because somehow or another it seems to be part of our DNA, our origination. It's our essence. And if we aren't faithful to that essence, many of the good things that we do are pale in their significance if that piece is not there, front and center.
It was in 1960 at the General Conference in Los Angeles, California, that we succeeded in getting past the social action law.
We try to be intentional about our social action theme, and that's because we were rooted in a social action movement in that regard. I do think there is we have found a way of combining a kind of a radical, for lack of a better term, neo-Pentecostalism, which helps the Spirit, the Holy Spirit move. Holy Spirit moves as He wants to move, but it enlivens the church. But I think we've had a certain genius about using that without losing the social thrust.
My great hope for African Methodism is to see it come alive again and to see it become the community-driven force that spoke so much in civil rights, that spoke so much in social justice, that spoke so much in educational concerns, that did so much to lift the level of our participation in making life meaningful.
I just think the black church has got to challenge the powers that be on behalf of our people. And I think if we do that, it will not only make a difference in terms of the world, but it will also even in terms help big church growth. People want to know, what does this church have to offer that's going to help me and my family? That single mother trying to raise 3 children, What does the church have to offer to help me in the raising of my children? I think the church has got to be relevant, and I do not think we're relevant if we're not speaking to the issues where people live. Richard Allen is the example premier of being a prophetic voice. You know, before he started the church, it was the Free African Society. He took an interest in the lives of people, and I think the church was a natural evolvement from the Free African Society.
If you know the history of Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma and the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, the marches, the training of the marches used to take place in Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma. And the distance from Brown Chapel to the Edmund Pettus Bridge was about a mile and a quarter. So they were really in good stride by the time they got to the bridge. The pep rallies and Andy Young and some others who were in charge of the training of marchers, and that took place in our churches. Not just in Selma, but there were a number of other churches in Alabama and in South Georgia along Highway 84 between Dothan, Alabama and Donaldsonville, Georgia, where many persons of the civil rights movement were trained.
When things in Memphis really got bad, it was persons such as H.Raf Jackson and Starks, Henry and Starks, who had relationships with the Martin Luther King. Claiborne Temple was right next door to the Minimum Salary Department, where H.Raf Jackson had his office. It was big, so it became a rallying place for demonstrations of Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy. They all met at Claiborne Temple to begin their marches.
Apartheid in South Africa now, the story hasn't really been told, but it started in the AME Church. The leaders of the ANC in the beginning were preachers of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Sister Makeke, the niece to the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in South Africa, came as a student to Wilberforce in Ohio. And that's how the connection of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. But here's the interesting fact. This lady was the founder of the ANC Women's League.
The AME Church was the only African church that provided leadership, that provided refuge for the politicians or the freedom fighters, if you may call them. I'll give an example of the first Republican president of Zambia. Southern Rhodesia was Zimbabwe now, and then the Northern Rhodesia was Zambia. So Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, his house was just next to the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And they were coming in the church whenever the colonial masters were pursuing them. They found solace in the church.
I had something else, but I think I'm going to stop it there because I want to open up for you all to get in here with your comments and your thoughts around some of what we've seen. And you can throw things in the chat if you want, but if you want to use the raise your hand sign, we've all been become pretty familiar with Zoom now. So if you could use that feature, that'll be wonderful. But what I'd like to know is what really spoke to you. I mean, you know, personally, I remember doing all of these projects and interviewing all the different persons. And so I don't know, I was getting a little choked up over here, just kind of you know, seeing people who have gone on now and the contributions that they made and the way that their voices still resonate with us to this day and the challenges that you can actually hear. But I want to hear from you, hear what you, what spoke out to you. And so as I see the hands pop up on there, we will come right to you. But I'll tell you a few things that stuck out to me. One was Bishop Cousins' line, and I'm thinking about this now as we're in this Freedom Summer, the focus being on the AME Church's response in this moment as we are witnessing fascism and authoritarianism take root, take hold right now in this moment. As I was just watching a clip where you have like officials of the highest order within government justifying the shooting of persons who are being questioned about whether they're illegal. So they are now judge and jury and executioner on the streets. And not even an investigation is needed apparently. But one of the things that Bishop Cousins said is that the AME Church gave its stamp of approval for social justice. So Sister Jackie knows well that we don't have to, it's not like a hard sell to go to churches. I mean, in fact, it's enshrined. What other church do you know that actually calls for every local church to have a commission, a standing commission on social action and social justice? That in and of itself is a revolutionary act. The fact that our presiding elders, as a part of their questions, in addition to how many people were baptized, how many people joined church, how many people left the church, how many people died this quarter, how many people are registered to vote. That is not something that we should take for granted, that this is a part of exactly who we are. Something else that really spoke to me was Bishop Adams, where he kind of laid out those three things, that as he kind of summed up who we are, that we are about the liberation of oppressed people, we are about self-help, and we are about self-definition. Powerful, powerful. And of course, I always love that quote by James Clyburn that says that Richard Allen was not looking for religion when he left St. George's. He said he already had religion. He said he was looking for a movement, and that this movement that he started then has not stopped, but this movement has continued on. And so thank you, Reverend Jackie Pinckney there in the first agrees that Clyburn's statement is profound. I agree 100%. There's a Sister Angela Spears out of the Philadelphia Conference says, what stuck out to me was the solidarity of the people when they left St. George's and when they didn't allow the president's brother to interrupt worship. You know, that was, I wish I could have thrown all the material from those interviews in here, but I'm telling you, man, those stories were just fascinating to get them from people who were YPDers at the time, like Bishop Leith, to others who are, who were like Bishop Adams, who got elected at that general conference, and everybody in between giving their different vantage point of that particular incident and episode. So, so the fact that the church has continually found itself in moments like this. And so we have a roadmap already. Regina Melvin, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Reverend Doctor. It was fascinating to see it again. And I said see it again because I have looked at some of the earlier tapes that you had shown, and I had actually shared that as a DOLA, Director of Lay Activities, for my local church in a history training. So it is being used, and I did get off of YouTube. And so one of the things that sticks out to me again today was how global and international, since persons want to use international now, of our connection. And I don't think a lot of people realize is that, of course, it did begin back in the 1790s when Richard Allen took care of the free Jamaicans, as the story brought out. And then, of course, the fact that some of the major founders of the ANC in South Africa were AMEs also. And I don't think that a lot of us know that. And that's why we need to keep teaching our history, not just within our churches, but within the community. And so I don't know if you were ready for questions, but I do have a question of how else in your administration, and you can answer this anytime if you like, in your administration, are you planning on distributing our history to the masses? Because we know it's not being taught in the schools, and this so big thing about this administration and other administrations who have tried to erase our history. So of course we have to be the main promoters, and so I know you have some plans, and maybe you can share that with us at one time. Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, well, thank you. That's an outstanding question. And yeah, the simple answer is yes. We want to, so first of all, the projects that we've done are for public consumption. I think we first rolled them out, we may have sold the DVDs back when there were such a thing as DVDs. So because people wanted to have a copy, but the intent was always to do what we do now, which is to put it on YouTube and to have it available for you to download or to share. All of those projects that you've seen tonight are available, but we're also working on new projects. And listen, I'll tell you, one of the things I would love to be a hallmark of my time as historiographer would be to finish with a documentary on each Episcopal district's founding and the significant moments and people that came out of it, and the same with all of the various components. Tomorrow, for example, and I'm not sure where this will be, when this will be airing live. So, but I'm here at the seat of the Women in Ministry, their regular meeting. And so thanks to their president, Reverend Joy Gallman, she asked me to work with them on doing a documentary. And this will actually show and demonstrate the founding of WIM, going back to that 1976 General Conference with the position paper that was done by Dr. Jacqueline Grant, who will be interviewed along with a lot of different persons and other voices, because you'd be surprised at how few people actually understand how that happened, the events that led up to it. So we have things that are not even ancient history. I guess if you're like a young person, you think 1976 is ancient history, but for most of us, that's not ancient history. That's something that is in most of our lifetime. And yet people have already kind of forgotten who the major players were, the events were. So we have to take advantage of people while they are here with us to make sure that those stories get told. And so please, if you have questions, you can hit the raise your hand piece right now. And I'm looking in the chat. There are a few other questions. I'll try to read some of these here out loud. And let's see. All right. My question is, how do you think Bishop Allen might approach mobilizing voters today who are not connected to a church community? Additionally, how do you think he would encourage and educate first-time voters, particularly young people who may not have strong ties to civic or faith institutions? Thank you. That's a great question, Rebecca Christian. So listen, remember, for the most part, the people who were in the founding generation or two of the AME Church did not have access to the vote. And those who did were kind of in the minority. I think, first of all, they would be appalled by the fact that after all of the struggle, after all of the bloodshed, after all of the church bombings and arsons and people disappearing for us to even have the right to vote, that they would look and see numbers where we have elections in some of our cities that we're lucky if we get a 20% turnout. I know this is Sister Jackie's big pet peeve. She's been active with Vote with AME V-Alert, and she and I have been working on different kind of things to strategize to get people out. But I think that what Richard Allen would probably say to us is that every generation of AME people have to find out what their issue is and have to commit to doing what they can with their issue. There has not been a time yet that we could relax and just do church, right? That time has not come yet. That in his day, it was the anti-slavery movement and abolitionism. the generation or two that followed him, it was the buildup to the Civil War, fighting against the Fugitive Slave Act. After that, you had Reconstruction, and the AME Church moved into high gear, electing people in those positions and doing everything that we could when that window was open. And when the window closed and Reconstruction ended and the lynching started and Jim Crow started, the church kicked into a different gear and began to fight. We never went away. We never disappeared. We have always been, I mean, we are the consistent. Some people have kind of come in and gone out, but there has not been a time that we have not been there. And so I think that if Alan can say anything to us or anybody from that founding generation, it would be, what is your call in this moment right now? What are you all being called to do in this moment right now? Find it and go do it. Use new tactics, because the old tactics won't work. Well, maybe they will, some of them might, but understand that the tactics have to be about what we're facing right now. And if you don't think that voter disenfranchisement is on the menu, then I don't know where you've been in the last 2 years. So that we've got to make sure that we turn up. I mean, I think every election is the most consequential. And I know that we are not just simply a denomination of Americans. So there are probably people on here tonight or who will watch who have issues of their own in their own country. And so, but in this context, I would say that we've got to be sure to take advantage of every opportunity. And South Africans would agree. I was there a couple of years ago and I was shocked to hear young South Africans on the news talking about not voting, that voting don't change anything. And I'm thinking, my God, it's like, we're not talking about the 1960s. We're talking about when I was in college, when they got that right to vote. And all of a sudden already people are feeling like there's no need. So we have to keep the hope part about it so that people will continue to go out and turn out. Let's see, other questions. I'm looking through the chat. All right, Sister Jackie, you got any comments? Let's see, are you talking because you're muted? Yeah, you're muted. All right, maybe you don't have it. All right, no problem. Well, so listen, you want to get a copy of the video, go to the AME churches. Let's see if I can maybe, Reverend French, can you just drop in the chat the YouTube channel for the publishing house? And I think that actually might be out of the Christian Recorder. I'm not sure exactly who manages the that page. But if you go to YouTube and you look for the African Methodist Episcopal Church, our official YouTube page, and you go in the videos section, then you will find all of those videos there. If you follow me on social media on YouTube, like Sister Regina Melvin, you'll find Black History on Two Wheels, and you can follow me there and all of the exploits that I do on the motorcycle. Now, let me just tell you one of the things since, well, I'll come back to that in a second. Go ahead, Sister Foots, and somebody don't let me forget to talk about Farmville, Virginia, and Bishop Cousin, and Reverend Godwin Douglas, and Bishop Reed. Go right ahead, Sister Barbara.
Okay, this reminds me, I went back in history of my own life. I grew up in a small town that was located 18 miles from where the Klan sat. I can clearly remember the battles that went on to try to keep everybody safe, and lynchings was still a potential happening. But one of the things I remember was the position of the church. The AME Church, Tyree AME Church, in this little town where we had itinerant preachers coming in and out. But they taught us, they made sure we knew our history. They made sure that we knew what was what. But we lost that connection when they came in. We did not ask for integration. We asked for equal representation. But when it came in with integration of the schools, we started losing that whole focus within the church to teach our history. And I think education is important, and we need to get back to teaching our history. What the schools are not doing, I think the church needs to take it up. And the question that struck me from the video, what does the church have to offer? And I think that's a key question. What do we have to offer to our youth, to our voting adults about all of this that we are encountering today?
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, one of the things that the church still offers is space. And that's a great question, Sister Flitz. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about I've said this before, and I'll say it here because I think it makes sense, that the AME Church has space. One of the greatest gifts that Richard Allen gave us is the gift of having our own space. I mean, that's what Bishop Adams was getting at, that we can do for ourselves, that we don't, I mean, like literally, we don't have to ask permission from anybody when it's time for us to hold a meeting or do anything else. And so the fact that we actually have this space and that we can utilize it for whatever we want. Someone asked the question earlier about persons who are not part of the AME Church, that, you know, when you think about all those historic moments, whether it was Brown Chapel, Selma, or any of these other kind of movements during the Montgomery bus boycott, for example, at St. Paul, and the other church that I can't remember, I think it was St. John, I believe, where a lot of the community meetings happened. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was St. John. But these meetings were not just for AME people. We allowed everybody to come in. And when Richard Allen purchased that land on October 10th, 1791, that we still have in our possession as a denomination now, what that did, it's exactly what Bishop Kawembe was talking about in the documentary, when he said that the freedom fighters fighting against the Rhodesian government for their freedom were able to hide in AME churches because it was an American entity, it was an American organization. And so the very fact that we even had space was revolutionary. So what should we do in this moment? I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing with our space? Is it something that is just simply for us, for choir rehearsal, which is important, for Bible study, which is important, for fellowship and worship, all important things, but is it also open to people in the community who may never confess a faith like we have, but they have issues, and they have issues that they need space to work it out. And so are we offering our space for community meetings, for town halls, for people to come in to sometimes just unpack and just have a place to lament this time that we're living in, where you got people of faith who can receive them and just kind of hear them out. But I think that we have to become, redevelop our imagination in this moment and think about how we are the best stewards with what we have. And yes, I absolutely believe that there's a role for the AME Church in this moment, and that when we are pressed, we always rise to the occasion. I'll close with this story. And I learned this on the motorcycle, and I put those two links in the chat for Black History on Twos and the AME Church's official website. And thank you again, Reverend French, just put it there again. So I've been doing a piece on Brown versus Board of Education. I was a fellow last year for the National Trust. And I mean, get this, I was actually given a grant to go and ride my motorcycle and do historic interviews. So I went to Topeka, Kansas, of course, interviewed the family of the Reverend Oliver Brown, who was an AME preacher. Brown is named after an AME preacher. I know that is not a surprise to most of you on here, but there were 5 cases that made up Brown. And what I discovered is I knew that was AME centered, and I knew about Sumterton, South Carolina, with Liberty Hill AME Church and the case that they had there with Briggs versus Elliott. What I did not know was the case in Farmville, Virginia, where Barbara Johns was a student leader, led that protest. She was the niece of Reverend Vernon Johns, who preceded Martin Luther King at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery. Small world, right? But Barbara Johns had led this movement. And when Brown versus Board of Education actually won and desegregation came down and was passed down into the schools, Virginia said no. The whole state for a year said, nope, ain't nobody going to school until this is appealed because we want our segregation back. And finally, the state gave up, but one county for years, for multiple years, said we're not having public school for anybody. And that's the county where Farmville, Virginia sits. Now, during this period, they call them the lost years. Others call it the stolen years, because there were students who missed kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. They lost all these grades because they could not go to school. But the AME Church stood up. So a young preacher by the name of Godwin Douglas was appointed to Beulah AME Church there in Farmville. And Beulah opened up their doors, which they had always done, but they were providing essentially like the unofficial public library, so to speak. Students were taught by teachers who weren't able to teach there in the basement at Beulah, but they went a step further. There was the group of high schoolers that were about to graduate, but because they canceled schools, they couldn't graduate. So Reverend Godwin Douglas called his bishop, Bishop Frank Madison Reed Sr., and said, do you think that the young new president at Kittrell College, an AME school, also in the 2nd District over in North Carolina, do you think that we can send those high school students to Kittrell and let them graduate from there? And so between Kittrell College, led by Bishop Cousin as a young preacher president, and Reverend Godwin Douglas at Beulah, and Bishop Frank Reed, who was a stalwart within the civil rights, he'd become an icon in South Carolina before going to the 2nd. And the three of them worked together, and those students were able to physically move, and they stayed with families in the AME Church at Kittrell College and in that community, and they went to high school there and graduated and received their education. So what do? We respond to the moment that we find ourselves in. We respond in kind with what is thrown at us. We may not be able to always determine what comes our way, but we can determine to fight back. And when we fight, we win. That's kind of our mantra in organizing, that when we fight, we always win. And so the AME Church cannot hide in this moment. So I'm thankful to the leadership that our Council of Bishops has been giving in this moment. I mean, they have been tremendous behind the scenes, you don't know, in signing off on things and being supportive of Freedom Summer and the Freedom Revivals and everything else. Grateful to my general officer colleagues who likewise are each finding their own way. And then to all of our various component leadership. I mean, the YPD, the big LTI that they had in Montgomery this weekend, man, shout out to Rochelle, Fry Skinner, our YPD director, and to Joyce Johnson. They curated an entire tour of Alabama led by Reverend Michael Waters out of the 10th, where they took those children, to 9 to 10 different sites, not just the lynching museum in Montgomery, but they took them to Selma. They walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They took them to Birmingham, where they could stand in front of the 16th Street Church and see where children lost their lives because their parents were trying to get them the right to vote. They saw all of this. And so I have a sense that Sister Jackie and I are not by ourselves, that there is a great swelling of support in this moment. And we just need to do much, much, much more of it, because the time demands. And speaking of time, I'm 3 minutes over. And so what can I say? That's it. But I want to thank you all for tonight. I totally enjoyed this on this evening. And Reverend French has dropped the link back in again. Go to amefreedomsummer.com. Go to the resources section, download this curriculum, make it a part of your own local church in your community. Find creative ways of using it and report back and let us know how you're using it and what you're doing. All right, now I've got to close this out in a word of prayer, and thank you all. Thank you all for your kind words as well. Just love to see all of you there. Hey, there's Reverend Carol Nelson Ingram. Bishop Brookins' mom was on my board of examiners when I was a young preacher there up in the California conference. So glad to see everybody. Let's pray. God, we thank you now for calling us. We thank you for empowering us. We thank you for commissioning us. Lord, we recognize that the spirits that we are up against today are not new, that they're just new forms of the same old spirit that has been trying to take us back. And yet, Lord, we know that you are faithful and that you continue to push our people forward. And we know that with you, all things are possible. So help us not become weary in well-doing, but instead, oh God, give us the strength for this part of the journey. Keep us strong, and then help us also to bring others into this faithful fight with you, because we know that when we fight with you, we always win. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Let every heart say amen.